Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I get a lot of questions regarding leaders, everything from leader line types, leader lengths, leader knots, and I do think it's something that can have a very big impact on your fishing. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to give you the information that I know about leaders, what I implement that I think gives me an advantage over some of the other anglers out there on the water. There are some tips that I do think make some really big differences. Before I get into that, I do want to remind you guys that I have a bunch of new lake breakdowns that just went live on the Fish the Moment website. The link is in the description for that. And if you're looking to purchase some tackle and want to support the channel, use the Tackle Warehouse affiliate link in my description as well. That's very much appreciated when you do your tackle shopping using one of my links. Don't forget, you can bookmark it as well for future purchases too. Okay, guys, so if we're talking about leaders really do have an important impact on your fishing. So for me personally, I'll give you a little background information. Up until probably, I'm going to say 6 or 7 years ago, was very much a straight fluorocarbon fisherman when it came to my spinning gear totally, and when it came to my bait casting gear, it was either a straight fluorocarbon or straight braid. There wasn't much leader lines going on. I still don't use a lot of leader when I'm talking about bait casters, but I do it almost on all of my presentations for my spinning gear, unless I'm throwing a jerk bait or swim baits as well. But pretty much everything else I'm using a leader. When I made that switch, it was because I was traveling with a bunch of excellent fishermen like Jeff Gustafson, Brandon McMillan, Austin Felix, guys like that were, excellent finesse fishermen, and they all were throwing the braid to fluorocarbon. And so I made the switch. And when I made the switch, I was sticking with really short leaders. I was tying like a 3-foot leader onto my braided line. And I was not getting the number of bites that I was getting prior to using braided line. So when I was throwing straight fluorocarbon, I know without a doubt I was getting more bites on just straight fluorocarbon with no braid. So when I made that switch with a 3-foot leader, I knew my bites dropped drastically. And in discussing with some of the other guys in the house, it was like, Matt, your leader's too short. So I went a little bit longer. I started using like a 5-foot leader. And I felt like I was getting a few more bites, but I still didn't think I was getting the same number of bites. So over time, what I have found is that the longer leader I go with means that I get more bites. And I have a very standard rule for leader length. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But when it comes to fishing a leader on your, on your spinning gear or on your bait casting gears, I think that you want to go with the longest leader possible that doesn't interfere with your fishing in any way. The thing with the leader is that you can make the argument that says, well, why even throw braided line? I know this happens all the time. When I get in discussions with my buddy Randy Blockett, he is straight a fluorocarbon guy. I'm kind of mixed because, like I said, I do have some presentations that I still throw straight fluorocarbon on, but I definitely feel like there's some advantages by having just a piece of your line in braid when you go with a braid to fluorocarbon leader. And what I mean by that is, a lot of people will say, if you throw a long leader, why do you even care, or why do you even use braid at that point? If you're making a 40-foot cast and 20 feet of your line is braid, and 20 feet is a leader, why even bother with the braid? Well, to me, the advantages of braid are it's much more sensitive, so I feel the bite better. It does not stretch, so I get much better hook sets as well. I feel like I just get much better hook sets. So those to me are two really good advantages to going with a braid fluorocarbon setup. I also feel like you can cast further with braid as well, so I can get a little bit more distance. Okay, so when you're talking about leader line specifically, I get a lot of questions about, well, there's a lot of leader line on the market now. So you've got a lot of companies that have come out with specific leader line, and then you've got other companies that have come out with a leader line spool. And is there a difference between those lines? And the answer is, in some cases, yes, in some cases, not. With some cases, with some companies, they produce a leader line spool, which is just a smaller, more economic size spool for just those people that use leaders. So, like Berkeley, in their case, and that's the line that I use, the 100% fluorocarbon, they've got now a smaller leader line spool, and it's been out for several years. I think it's 25 yards. Don't quote me to that, but it's a few dollars compared to buying 200-yard spool. So it's easier to keep in the boat because it's a small spool. If I'm sure you guys have had this happen too. You're carrying a spool line, whether it's in your backpack or your tackle box, or you've got it in a boat compartment, and it comes undone. You get your little rubber band or the little sticker that holds the line down comes undone. You get the whole spool can come apart. Well, if that happens with a 200-yard spool or a 1,000-yard spool, you've just lost a lot of money in line. If that happens with a small 25-yard leader line spool, it's not the end of the world. It's not that huge of an issue. But so to answer your question, is some companies offer just a smaller leader line spool. Other companies have come up with specific leader line lines, that are a little bit different from some of their other the other brands that they're offering. So I can't really speak to a lot of those and the differences, but just be aware that a leader line spool may mean that it's just a small size of line, and it may also mean that it's actually a little bit different than the normal fluorocarbon lines that they offer. When it comes to the leader length, this is my formula. Nothing super complicated, but this is how I do it. If I'm fishing in shallow water, so up to or less than 10 feet of water, what I'll do is I double the length of the depth that I'm fishing. So if I'm primarily fishing in 5 feet of water, I'll make sure I have a 10-foot long leader. And I'll do that up to 10 feet. So when I get to 10 feet, I'll have a 20-foot long leader. After 10 feet, I pretty much just have a standard 20-foot long leader. I feel like at that point, my line is far enough apart from the braided line that it's not going to have an impact. If I'm fishing 30 feet of water, maybe I'm vertical fishing at that point. Well, the fish I'm fishing for are most likely on the bottom anyways, and therefore they're still 20 feet away from the main braid line. To me, that has been a really important change that I've made. It is something that I feel like I'm back to the point where I get the same number of bites that I was getting when I throw straight fluorocarbon. And that primarily has to do with the fact that the length of the leader now is long enough that it's not going to interfere or potentially prevent the number of bites that I was getting. Because I do personally feel like braided line has a little bit of a sound and vibration to it when it's coming through the water because it's not straight, completely round. It does have multiple strands, which to me means that there's probably some sort of vibration coming off of that. I think with the X9, so I use the Berkeley braid, Berkeley X9 braid and the Berkeley X5 braid. The X9 is 9 strands compared to 5 strands, so the 9 is smoother and the X5 is a little bit more coarser, and there's advantages to both. But on my spinning gear, I'm primarily throwing the X9, which I think doesn't make as much noise, but I still would rather not. I'd rather limit any sort of outside noise that I can do, unnatural noises. And I feel like by having that long leader, you're doing that, and you're also taking away any sort of potential visibility of that line that the fish may or may not see. I don't have the answer for that, but for me, it's a confidence thing. And sticking with doubling the length of the leader up to 10 feet, which would then be a 20-foot leader, and that's standard after that, has been a really good thing for me. The last thing about leaders that I want to talk about are the knots. Everyone is always talking about the leader knot. Guys, I gotta tell you, I mean, I can tie the FG knot. I've done that. I do it occasionally if I'm pre-rigging up before a tournament. I'll tie some of those just to have them ready. But I don't really feel like there's an advantage over that than I do when I tie a good uni to uni knot, which is what I'll tie when I'm on the water in a hurry. I just hate giving up any sort of substantial amount of time. And I know, the experts out there with the FG knot are like, it takes me a minute to 2 minutes to tie. Well, I can tie the uni knot in 15 seconds. And in some cases, if you're fishing around the Great Lakes where you have zebra mussels, you may be retying a new leader multiple times throughout the day. And I would rather get extra casts at the end. And I don't feel like I'm getting that much more of an advantage by going with the FG knot over the uni to uni. The point here, guys, is whatever knot you choose, make sure it's a knot you feel 100% confident in is going to, not break, and it's going to, you know, be something that you can tie readily, easily, just something that you feel comfortable with. I'm not going to get into this FG versus other knots. It's just, to me, I like the uni to uni. I think the FG knot's fine too. I just don't feel like I can tie it anywhere near as fast as I can do a uni to uni. Anyways, guys, I hope this answers a bunch of your questions, because I've gotten a ton of questions regarding leaders. If you've got more comments or questions, throw it up in the comment section of the video. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and stay tuned. Another video coming out tomorrow.